Thank you so much for coming. This is a very important night and very timely with some issues going on. We are certainly very proud to have District Attorney Ryan here with us this evening and Chief Sheehan with us this evening. I'm Chris Malone, Superintendent of Schools, and the District Attorney and the Chief are going to be working as a tag team both in this session and then we're moving right over to the high school to do another presentation for all the junior parents in preparation for the prom. So it is that time of year where we get really concerned about student safety. Not that we take any time off with that, but certainly as we get into the long month of March with, bookend by vacation and winter doldrums moving into the spring, it does seem like some of these issues do tend to pop up a little bit more than others. So we're going to talk a lot about safety for your children this evening, and we have two great experts here tonight. So thank you so much for being here and showing that level of concern. It's important. This is a start. We want to keep this conversation going. It's really important. With that, let me just do a quick background on District Attorney Ryan. Mary Ryan has been serving as the Middlesex County District Attorney since 2013. She is a career prosecutor representing the Commonwealth's largest county with 54 towns and cities. She is recognized for her leadership on the opioid crisis and her innovative programs that address all aspects of substance use and addiction, prosecution, prevention, and treatment. As District Attorney, Mary Ryan has expanded initiatives in Middlesex County, including utilizing restorative justice practices, which we use at the high school, to intervene in the lives of at-risk youth and young adults and expanding diversion. She is an advocate for reforming the criminal justice system to put in place policies to address the collateral consequences for individuals who get involved in the criminal justice system. She regularly lectures and leads workshops on workplace safety, the dangers of prescription drug misuse, teen dating violence, and anti-bullying domestic violence prevention. And certainly for us, having the District Attorney here tonight certainly shows her commitment to the town of Tewksbury. We appreciate she comes every year. And with that, I'm just going to hand it off to Chief Sheehan real quick.
So I'm going to give you a 2-second bio of Chief Sheehan. It's not going to be anything like that, but I am your police chief. I have been a police officer in the town of Tewksbury for 32 years. I have raised my children here. All of my children are in their late 20s right now. One resides here in Massachusetts, works for the Tewksbury Police Department as a police officer. One is a nurse practitioner down in Maryland at Johns Hopkins, and one, my son, after we get out of the Marine Corps, did not like the temperature up here. He was used to warmer weather in California and Afghanistan, so he's down in Florida right now doing construction. But all of them went through this level of school here. All of them went through the high school there. They did not have as much advancement in social media as when they went to the school as they do now, but there was some substantial risks. I tell a story all the time at the high school when we talk on social host liability and the dangers of prescription drug use and underage drinking about a particular teacher at the time and now assistant superintendent that brought my attention to my daughters inappropriately posting stuff on Facebook because I couldn't even access Facebook at that particular time when they were in high school. So one of the important messages tonight is you really, I know the kids are advanced in technology. I know oftentimes they're more advanced than parents, but we really have to do our job, our due diligence as parents to try to educate ourselves enough to monitor and keep tabs on where our kids are going and what they're doing. A little bit about yesterday, the series of events that took place yesterday that are very in tune to what you're going to be listening to from the DA tonight. New website, Lipsy, not too new, I guess, but relatively new enough where when we reached out to computer experts about accessing technology to determine where the anonymous poster came from. People that are experts in that area really didn't know too much about Lipsy or how to access it because it is so relatively new. But another anonymous posting, application that allows itself to be attached to children's Snapchat account, and it's often used to bully to say things the kids wouldn't otherwise say when their name is attached to it, and can be used for things like yesterday that raised a really dangerous situation where words like shooting up the school were used, and it resulted in a pretty serious, significant disruption in the middle school yesterday when we had to send the kids off to the high school, make sure the kid was safe, and take the couple of hours we needed to investigate it and make sure that there wasn't anything that we needed to do, immediately to make sure that the kids would be safe while in the school. So a lot of information tonight. I will weigh in with the DA and we'll talk back and forth. But we're going to give our full attention to the DA. I just appreciate, as your police chief, there's nothing more important to me than the safety of the kids in this community and the student population. So I appreciate partnering with everybody in this room. It is really important to us that we work together, because it takes a village to get a kid through all of the grades of high school unscathed and away from substances and off of social media sites and away from bullying. We do teach all the kids in 4th grade. We're very fortunate with the current school department to allow us to integrate our Rad Kids program in 4th grade, which does teach kids an awful lot about internet protocols and being respectful of one another, and how not to, to gang up or bully, and how to report incidents that, to have the strength to report things like that when you're in a friend group and there's some peer pressure associated with it. So again, a lot of things are in place to try to help your kids, but that's not enough. We still need some partnerships with everybody in this room. So with that being said, I'll let the DA take it from there.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to thank you all for coming out. I know it's not easy to throw dinner on the table and try to get out the door, and everybody's a little disrupted today because of the snow. So I'm grateful to that. I'm grateful as well to the superintendent, to the principal, to the chief for being here. There's nothing that any of us as parents, and regardless of what your job is, there's nothing scarier than when you drop your kids off in the morning. And now it is a real worry, and my kid's going to be fine until I pick them up. And often you worry about, is everybody doing what they're supposed to do? You've chosen well in this town. I am here all the time. There is no prevention program that we think about doing that when I call, somebody's not saying, sure, when do you want to come? We'll do it. Maria's been great. I'm sure you all know her. We are friends and we see each other all the time. And that's all to the good. So I'm going to talk about a lot of these things tonight, but I also want to be sure that we have plenty of time for people to ask questions. I don't want to be talking about what you might know and then you leave and think she didn't address what I wanted to know. Now I know there's been this issue about the MoMA thing, the scary face and the possibility of the suicide. That whole thing is very scary. And one of the things I'm going to talk about, one of the things we're most concerned about is sort of the temptation for kids to be seeing these crazy things online and to be creating the next crazy video or fun video. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but one of the things that's been a real problem for us lately is the Tide Pod Challenge. So you probably heard that, the Tide Pods for your laundry. Well, there seems to be some idea that the funniest video is who can drink as many of those as possible. So we're seeing kids showing up all over the place in the emergency rooms, and there's that temptation to just, if you had 20, I can do 25. The same thing not very far from here, the end of last school year, we had the kids that were on their skateboard creating videos of crazy skateboard tricks. And they were in a skateboard park, so okay, that's fine. Then one of the brighter lights among them decided, wouldn't it be funny to take the skateboard off the back of a car, to get up on the roof and come down the back of the car. Again, not a good idea, but they managed to navigate doing that until the next Cecil B. DeMille decided, wouldn't it be a good idea if somebody was moving the car while they skateboarded off the back of it? As you can imagine, that didn't end well. And we ended up, fortunately, the kids were hurt, but they survived. So there is that just, if you can do it, I can do it better. And, when you see, as I say to the kids, and I've been out a lot of days this week talking to kids in school, and I say, when you see that commercial and it tells you this is a closed course with a trained driver, well, that applies to what you're putting on social media too. So they are living all the time with on the one hand, the brain's not really developed yet to have that control to think through, going off the back of a moving car isn't going to end well. And yet, it's who can post the funniest video. So that video that's out there, and we're all concerned after the stuff that came out before, the reasons why I'm committing suicide, that whole craze a year ago or whatever. We have no reason to think that that is not a hoax at this point. No one has actually seen what is supposed to be out there. The face has been popping up. Nobody has actually seen these so-called suicide videos, but we're obviously watching, because there seems to be no limit to what crazy thing can suddenly go out there. So that's the other piece, and I have a son and a daughter, and I know how hard what I'm saying can be. That is the other reason why you just have to be on top of what they're looking at, because there is so much really shocking stuff that's out there. When we take a phone, when we're doing an investigation and we take somebody's phone and we download what they've been looking at, it is pretty horrifying. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And every one of us in here, I'm sure, I'm always horrified when I get that report at the end of the week of your screen time. I'm like, whoa. So, we're modeling that behavior for them, and yet at the same time, we're hoping that they're not enticed to look at any of that crazy stuff. So I think you all have to now start by assuming that they're seeing some crazy stuff. And then what's the conversation got to be about that? So I got a couple of really, we haven't scared you enough already, this is the other piece too that I think people are not so much aware of, right? So everybody knows, kids can be using tablets and phones and whatever. Another way that kids are getting on and they are making contact with people is through the smart TVs and the gaming consoles. And when your kid's sitting on the couch and he's got his game console and you think, okay, fine, he's playing hockey or he's doing whatever, you have to be wondering who else is in there. So we've had a number of cases lately that have ended in the kind of things that have been making the news lately, of somebody contacting the person they think is a child but who is an adult. And they've been happening through that gaming system. Because it's an easy, think about when you have the kids in the house and they're playing games together. There's sort of these grunting, one-word conversations going on. So you don't have to be saying much. If you're the adult with bad intention and you've contacted the kids through a gaming system, you can really get a lot of feeling like, gee, we're great friends, with very little conversation. I never see when we download a phone or download one of these systems anything that's really too inspiring. But then the kids will tell us, well, they're my friends. I'm thinking, really? Because there's like one syllable here all through this whole thing. But that is a way that if you have one of those, you really have to be talking to your kids about it and monitoring what they're doing with them. And then obviously just the piece of, how much they're on there, which is pretty horrifying. Shockingly, 98% of kids are in the house with this device. I am surprised every time I'm in the grocery store and the little kids are in the carriage and they're doing. Now, the interesting piece at Disney now, at Disney World, the carriages that you rent for kids, you know how they always had a cup holder? Now they have a screen holder. So you brought your kid to Disney World to give them a screen of your phone or your tablet so they can be watching. They actually have the plastic device built right into them. 6.5 hours, I think that's pretty conservative, but think about that. I mean, if you think about how much time your kids should be sleeping, how much time they spend at school, you'd like them to take a shower, maybe take out the trash, and then add in the amount of time that they're online. It's pretty outrageous. Obviously, this is what they're doing on there. So this is the challenge, and if your kids have been in one of the programs I've done, I make them look for the answer, but I will give you the clue. I'm sure most people have heard of Fortnite, the game that is the most compelling game ever. I was in Chelmsford yesterday, and we shamed the police chief because he had never heard of Fortnite. So here's the example I use for the kids. I talk to the kids about how so many of them have an aspiration to be a professional athlete. Now, of course, I don't let them use their phones while they're doing this, but this season, there is an NHL hockey team which had great prospects. It became last in the league. And as I say to the kids, nobody wants to buy the t-shirts and the hats from Team Last. And the coach, obviously his job being on the line, was trying to figure that out. The reason they figured it out was Fortnite. Because the players were spending all of the travel time, plane or bus, playing Fortnite. So they were not in great shape. They're supposed to be resting and sleeping, and they were playing so late into the night that they were missing practice. So what I say to the kids is, here's somebody who gets to be a professional athlete. They're making a lot of money, $1 bazillion in endorsements, and they are throwing that away because they're so addicted to Fortnite. So this is a true story. You can go online and Google to get the team, but the team banned Fortnite. These are grown men who are inking contracts for many $1 million, and they could not turn off Fortnite. So think about it. You know, one of the #1 issues for kids is, where's your kid's phone and device when they go to bed? If it's a girl, it's certainly in bed with them. And if it's a boy, it's in the room. So first of all, there's the whole danger. You've probably seen, we've had a number of phones, especially the more advanced iPhones, that overheat while they're in the charger, and they've gone on fire in the bed. But first of all, they're not sleeping the way they should be sleeping to go to school. And the other piece, and this is the piece that really makes the bullying, all of the bullying and the scary bad behavior so much worse. We all know kids have been bullying each other since there have been kids. It used to be the case, certainly when most of us went to school. If someone was bullying you or being unkind to you, when you went home on Friday afternoon, you were probably pretty done with them. Because if they wanted to talk to you, they had to call at your house phone, and you probably weren't going to see them. And calling at the house phone meant, usually, there was a phone in some main area of the house where there were some adults who could hear you and some adults who could hear them. So the language that I see all the time on 5th graders' phones was not being used. And now, what has changed is not that somebody is saying something mean, but 2 things. #1, they're saying it 750 times. And they're saying it in forums where it can be amplified by everybody else who joins in and repeats it, because they're in these little groups or chats or whatever, so that it's not me saying something bad to you, but I'm saying it and she joins in and she joins in and she joins in. It is not unusual for us to take off of a week or phone from kids 3,000 or 4,000 texts. So think if every one of those is bad, and it just keeps going and going and going. And the other problem is, I walk up to you, even as an adult, think about a conversation you have where you feel insulted by something somebody says. You walk away, you might kind of return to it thinking about it, but over time it sort of lessens. It's not the same as reading it over and over and over again. That's what weighs the kids down. That's the biggest impact. So these things, you know, it's all fine for them to go on and do that, but think about how they're using that time. All right, the social media, as you may well know, every one of these social media sites tells you that you can't be on if you're under the age of 13. I don't know anybody under the age of 13 who doesn't have access to one of these sites, so they're completely overriding those. And the other point is, even when some of the sites were being a little bit stricter about making people get on and acknowledge that they were over a certain age, well, we had lots of parents who were allowing them to go on because their friends were on. It was how they were getting their team information, you know, the whole WhatsApp, that whole thing became how you got your practice information, all of that, so people were getting on there to do that. This Tinder and Grindr, if you read the paper today, the really awful incident that's going on in Essex County right now with the police officer, 13-year-old Tinder and Grindr were the source of that connect. no 13-year-old should be on Tinder or Grindr. If you haven't looked on it, that itself is pretty horrifying. But kids are able to get on there, and that, you know, and that's just a reality. So I think you have to prepare your kids for that. And these are just, if you don't know, some of the ones that you hear. The rule of thumb is, whatever platforms you think your kids are on, they are on 3 times as many, with different names and different accounts. So I think in first grade, they know how to create accounts you can't find. All right, so you may think you've said, you know, you can be on whatever calculator, or you can be, this is a very scary one, anonymous, because it is pretty anonymous. And it gives kids an opportunity to be saying things that you would hope your child was never saying, if you could see them or somebody else could see them.
Mary, can I just
Yeah,
interrupt
sure.
for one quick second? I just, because that brings a pretty important point up that you guys should all have for information, and I'm sure that it's probably been shared, maybe by the superintendent on another occasion, but because we have a pretty robust school safety strategy in town, the superintendent and I, the town manager, we engaged in a contract with a service of software called Social Sentinel probably about a year ago now, Chris, maybe a little bit less than a year ago. And what it does is it mines these sites, these public sites, like Twitter and Facebook and everything else for postings, and it targets words like suicide, like threat, like kill, like shoot, like bully, like you know, very harsh words, gun, and it targets those, and then it sends those posts to myself, the superintendent, to school resource officers, to the detectives that are assigned to the criminal bureau. It sends it to the town manager, and we investigate any claims. And sometimes we get things that aren't, you know, someone might be talking about shooting a puck in the driveway, and that's great. We'd rather get those, and sometimes it's led us to some pretty scary stuff about, you know, an individual that maybe was in his 50s that was monitoring like a cheerleader Twitter feed that was going on out of East Elite or whatever, and you know, and the individual was a pretty scary individual to be monitoring that and making comments about girls that were really young on there. So we do have a lot of steps in place. The only thing is that's even limited. I called Social Sentinel when we had yesterday's incident to find out where we're at with that, and because things like Lipsy are so new, they haven't gotten a contract in with them yet. Some of them, because they're totally private and anonymous, won't sign a contract to avail Social Sentinel to scrape and you know, use the space in the geo area around that to grab words like that. So we do miss some stuff, but I can tell you, shortly after all of the posts that came out on Lipsy, we got posts on Social Sentinel from students that went on Twitter and said they're terrified because their bus has been diverted to the high school and they're afraid that people are going to be shooting up the Wynn Middle. So we did get some stuff relative to that. We didn't get the anonymous stuff on the night prior, which would have been very helpful to us because we might have been able to avert the disruption of school in the morning if that had happened. But we are taking every step we possibly can to look into the things that are out there to make sure that your kids are safe so that we can get the information ahead of time. And if a kid is being bullied or someone's, you know, trying to talk about words like suicide, that we get that information and we intervene at the earliest stage so that we can possibly try to divert that from becoming a real bad emergency. Myself and the superintendent are shortly with the town manager also sitting down with another software vendor that might be able to help us with similar stuff in the schools to prevent stuff like this from happening as well. So I can tell you it's a constant battle, but we're up on top of trying to do everything that we can proactively and not just reactively after things happen to try to avert them.
And that is part of the problem. You know, these sites change literally every day. So there's a new kind of thing, everybody's using something else. You know, it's like Facebook now. You don't find kids on Facebook. That is just so far in their rear view. You know, it's people our age that are using Facebook. The same thing is true with some of the YouTube people are only posting stuff on now. They're not using that to communicate. One of the things that's very scary, and one of the things when I come out to a school, especially when something has happened, you know, we're always looking for clues. This is like the human lie detector. When I tell the kids that unlike what they may have heard, Snapchat pictures do not disappear. literally, I can tell who's pulling their shirt and who's getting red. We know who's been sending pictures they're concerned about. They do not, and then somebody can extract those pictures afterwards. And the other thing is, the thing that is really damaging in terms of kids being bullied is somebody always takes a screenshot. So somebody, I've had kids this big sit and tell our investigators, well, in 30 seconds it's gone, and then they are shocked to see it when we pull it back up again. So that's, they are thinking that they've got all this anonymity out there. So these are things that you should know about, because if they're not using them, these are particularly dangerous, the WhatsApp, because they're able to do messages without using their phone, like using the phone capability. So they can be talking and you can't necessarily see them. So you may, even if you're monitoring your kid's history and you're thinking, I'm looking at his tweets, I'm looking at who he or she is calling, they can be doing that. Right now, that is the biggest thing that people are doing serious crimes. They go on and talk that way because we have a hard time finding those. Yeah.
What is hidden?
Which one?
The category hidden? What does that mean?
Oh, hidden is a way that you can look like that's where you are. So you see calculator on your phone, okay? Yeah. Yeah. So they can have a whole separate account running behind them. That's what I mean. So you think they have 3 sites. They've got some hidden in Vaulty or calculator. Calculator percentage is not them figuring out the tip somewhere. Yeah, yeah.
Or doing their homework.
Yeah, yeah. They're not doing their math homework. So, yeah.
And one of the other things too, just to bear in mind, that if you get angry at one of your children and they have a cellular service and you say, that's it, I'm going to suspend their cellular service and they're not going to be able to communicate anymore, all the kid needs is a source of a wireless internet on that phone where the service is suspended, and they can still send text and still access their applications. So it's more than just the phone. If they have a phone in their hand and they have a way
Right.
to access the internet, we're in trouble.
And WhatsApp and all of that allow them to communicate without using the phone. So you can turn off Verizon. If they physically have the phone, they're still going back and forth with their friends the same way. And raise your hand if you are the one person who has never said, I'm taking the phone, I'm shutting it off, I pay for the phone. All of those things I've said. That just gives you some sense of the popularity of things, what they say they're using, but what they're really using. So it's a little bit different. This again is what I talked about, that's supposed to be 13. The sites are supposed to report things like a number of the sites are in trouble. Forbes magazine did this big article about the Tide Pod Challenge, because one would think they are supposed to self-report when they see things that are dangerous. When you see kids drinking those little detergent things, you would think they would be reporting that. There has been no official report of that. This is the personal stuff that we talk to the kids all the time about, and it just really doesn't seem to penetrate. They think if they say, my name is Marion, and they don't tell their last name, nobody can figure it out. But this is my date of birth, this is where I go to school. They can't figure out that if I'm an adult and I am looking for kids, I'm going to be very quick at putting those pieces together. So, over and over again, telling them that part. They'll give out their email. Once you have somebody's email, you can find out a whole lot of information about them. They think that's fine because their email is, your family name at MSN or whatever. But it can get them to the address. And I'm going to talk in a minute about the locator piece. The locator piece, every kid is doing this. A lot of places are doing it. So you go to a restaurant, you take a picture of your food or you take a picture of your friends, and it automatically, because of what they've got going on at the restaurant, it will imprint, I'm at this restaurant. So now I'm home, I'm a bad guy, I see the picture of these 3 cute girls, I know exactly where they are. All right? So, and the other problem is, anytime they do the hashtag, they're picking up where they are. Okay? And lots of times the kids either don't know how or don't want to turn off that locator service. And you have to be careful, because even if you go on their phone and you turn off the locator service, there are certain applications that when you use them, if you use them long enough, they will default it to off again. Okay, it just kind of times itself out and the hashtags will be coming up again. Think about when your kids were little, right? If you didn't put their names on their backpack because you didn't want people to walk up and call their name and they would think, how this person must know me if they know my name. Think about if you're a little kid and somebody's coming up to you and they know all that about you, right? It lowers their defenses. They're suddenly going to think it's okay to be talking about this person. So it operates kind of on the same theory as Waze. You know how when you're driving and you're using Waze, you can see when there's a police officer ahead or there's a crash or whatever. You can do the same thing by going on wherever you are on that location, whoever else is using social media around you. And the kids forget things like, you notice that woman that was working and she had the lanyard around her neck? They don't realize that when they take pictures and they post pictures, especially if they're not careful about their settings being private, not public, that little things like you're wearing a sweatshirt, with the name of your team on it, all of those things, I'm now a bad guy. It narrows me right in on where you are. So you're wearing a t-shirt that says the Ryan School. Well, it will take me 5 minutes online to figure out where the Ryan School is in Massachusetts. So the kids really don't pay attention to that, or they take a picture outside their house, with the number on the post. So there's all of that stuff. We spend a lot of time talking to them about, think about what you're inadvertently showing to people. So, this is the really, much of this is scary, but really scary piece of this is that 82% of the time when there's something that ends up in a criminal activity, the relationship started by the offender getting into their social media. There's a whole process of people who offend against kids called grooming, where they cultivate what they know, talk about it, make them feel good about the things they know. And that stuff is just all out there for the taking now, in terms of what pictures they're posting, what games they're playing, if they're meeting them in a game room. If I meet you in the Fortnite chat group, I know you like that, so I'll just keep talking up those characters or what levels I've gotten to in that game. And 65% of the offenders use the social networking to zero in on the location. So you used to have to be worried about who would see your kids going to the bus stop or being in the playground or wherever. Now you have to worry about somebody seeing your kid online someplace and then zeroing in, right? I tell the kids all the time a story, and it's a story that happened now about 18 months ago. Happened about 7 miles from here. I cannot tell this story without the hair on the back of my neck standing up. We had a 13-year-old little girl had a fight with her parents. She was very disrespectful during the fight. As a result, the punishment was there was something at school that she really wanted to participate in on the weekend. She has the fight in the beginning of the week. Parents tell her, you cannot do that. She is, as all of us do and all kids do, she's in one of these little chat groups and she's, complaining about her parents, and her friends are chiming in, this isn't right, I can't believe they did this to me, the usual. And one of the people who's in that group, with whom she'd been engaged in conversation for months, because they're willing to wait and stretch out that grooming. This person had been in the group. She understood that person to be a boy the same age living in a neighboring town. He was commiserating about this problem with the parents. Finally, he suggests, this is so awful that you can't do whatever they're going to do. Why don't you come hang out at my house on Friday? I will meet you at the train station in your town. She goes off to school on Friday. The dad drives her to school. They're still fighting. She doesn't have much to say. She gets out of school. She's walking into school, and the father notices that her backpack seems too heavy. He goes home and he says to the mother something about, what has she got in the backpack? They talk back and forth. They are concerned that maybe she's running away, that she's put clothes in the backpack. Conversation back and forth, The father wants to look on her device and see who she's been talking to. Mother feels like they shouldn't invade her privacy. That conversation takes up a lot of time. Eventually, they decide to go online, and they find this conversation back and forth. And I'm going to meet at 3 o'clock at the train station. At that point, they decide to call the police. It's now, almost 3 o'clock, because this conversation has taken a lot of the day. Police go down. They are sitting near the train station. Sure enough, the parents have given them the photo of the girl. Sure enough, they see her trudging up, backpack on. Train comes in, people get off the train. There's the mothers with small kids, the old people, they know they're not it. They're looking for the boy. The boy is a 30-year-old man. The boy has a record of offending against kids. The boy extracts a picture of the girl from his pocket. He's aiming himself at the girl. The police wait till he gets there. Most concerning, in the guy's pocket are 2 train tickets to Virginia. His plan, where he was from. His plan is to get an Uber, go to South Station, and take the train back. That story scares the life out of me. But what is most scary about it is, had there not just been that fluke of the backpack that led them to the device, think about your own kids. There's a time when they're supposed to get home. When they don't get home, what are you going to do? You might be calling their friends, you're calling some other parents, maybe you drive down to the school, time is tick, 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 tick. So by the time you figure out that maybe you need to call the police, an hour and a half's gone by. In that situation, had that girl gone, she would have been long gone, and nobody was going to be looking at the train, was going to start by looking at the train in South Station, because they were going to be looking in the town where she was. So that's what's so important about the kids realizing what kind of information they're giving out. And also that they know you're going to be looking at their devices, because you're paying the bill. And I think it's wrong to let kids think they have privacy and then violate that. So you got to be clear they have no privacy. You got to do it. All right, let's just, this is the child enticement statute. This statute is a pretty new statute in Massachusetts. It was passed because for a very long time, we didn't have a way to prosecute somebody who lured a kid, and the kid at some point was smart enough to get away. So the guy who would pull up in the car and say, come see my puppies, come see whatever, and the child would come closer and closer and then maybe decide to leave, or a friend would pull them away. We had absolutely nothing to prosecute that person for, because luring the kid up to the car, and there were always those occasions when it was sort of an innocent, somebody was going to give somebody a ride home. So this statute makes it a crime. It was the first statute, and we are really one of the first in the country to have that. Okay? These are just the grooming that I talked about, and it obviously progresses more and more often to this asking for the pictures. Some kind of pictures or graphic things to be sent. Sexting is, and everybody hears that, and everybody thinks, never my child on either end. What is compelling about this is probably the next statistic, which is that, those are the statutes. Over 55% of the people who get a picture are going to share the picture. So, especially boys. For some reason, boys get a picture, the first thing they do is they send it to everybody. So, not even necessarily maliciously, but look what I got. And they're sending that around. People are taking screenshots of that, and it's now traveling through the school. So that is a felony, because obviously those statutes take into consideration the kind of taking photos, making money off of that. We don't want to be prosecuting people in Middlesex County the first time that happens, and assuming no one's been blackmailing somebody about it or all of that. We do a class. We do a class for the parents. We do a separate class for the boys and the girls. I always know when that's that day, because I see kids trudging through our building. The most important piece of it, though, we are much more forgiving than most other places are. And it is a felony, so you're not going to go to jail if you're 12 or 13 years old, but being convicted of a felony makes you ineligible for federal financial aid. Kids have no idea about that. So when you apply for federal financial aid, the last question is, I've never been convicted of a felony. So that's a lifetime consequence that people aren't always thinking about. And then just, you know, we've all heard the story of the Phoebe, the little girl Phoebe, out in the western part of the state, who the pictures were sent around. She ultimately committed suicide. You know, it's just, it really is what it can do to other kids. And one of the things we talk to with kids is not only think about what happens, even if you are sort of not intending that, but also we talk to them a lot about being good bystanders. Because when that kind of a picture is going around, somebody has to be the person who stands up and says, yeah, this isn't right, and tells the grown-up about that. And this is the bullying statute. As I said, you know, bullying has been going on forever. This statute does not make bullying a crime. There are acts that are bullying that are criminal. So there can be an assault and battery that's part of a bullying. Being unkind is not a crime. But it is something that the school has to address. And it applies to things that may happen even off campus that impact the school. So there's a weekend party, something happens as a result of that, we're sending around the sexting pictures. The school can and should be dealing with that. People often say, well, it happened when it was the weekend. Schools shouldn't do anything to my kids. This statute requires them to do that. I'm sorry, did you?
No, I'm just looking.
Okay. And then cyberbullying is obviously what I talked about before. It's all of those things we always could do, now magnified and multiplied because you're doing it online or doing it on one of the devices. You know, these signs that you want to be looking for in your kids, and it's hard to tell these, that maybe something's going on, that they're bullying, they're being bullied. It's hard to see this because they're all the same things of preteens. Right? Every preteen is moody and silent and changes their mind about doing things. So it really is having those conversations. And, you know, first of all, it's a lot to learn and figure out, and everybody feels a little bit awkward starting those conversations about, you know, Tinder or Grindr, and that's just not the conversation you want to have. But one of the things that's interesting, we do a program called Good Choices that we go around the county and we do with middle school kids. And we have had kids help us develop scenarios that the kids are responding to. And so we tell them a real scenario, like you see that kind of a picture, or your friend tells you this picture's out there. What would you do? And the room's divided up into yes, no, and maybe. And the kids have to decide, would they tell a grown-up? They go to wherever. Now, I'm the district attorney. I'm usually there with the chief of police. It's not hard to figure out what the right answer should be. What is amazing to me always are two things. Kids are so honest. So the clear answer would be like, yes, I should tell a grown-up. 90% of the kids will go to no. The other 10% are at maybe. And then when you start peeling back from them of like, why wouldn't you tell? The number one reason being because I'd be afraid the bully will turn on me. But we have 7 scenarios. I never finish all 7. That's how much they will talk about that, and they don't know me. So as difficult as those conversations are, I think when you get in the habit of having those conversations, they are exposed to so much, and they really don't know what to do with it. And if you're not letting them look at it, or maybe they don't have a phone yet, I guarantee you somebody on the bus or in the cafeteria is showing them something that they didn't know how to process or where to put it.
Karen, can I just
sure.
for one quick second? I'm going to head over to the high school because we're getting close to the start.
Yeah, I'm going to be right behind you.
I'll probably get out ahead of the district attorney so that she can answer any questions that you have. Does anybody have any questions for me before I leave? Because I'll get out there and get going at the high school and leave the district attorney to answer any questions or finish up the presentation with you. But if no one has any questions, I just have one last favor that I will ask of everybody in this room and ask that you share with other parents that have kids that are at this grade level or even higher. Last week, was school vacation week, and we had some pretty horrific incidents happen over the course of about a 3-day period that involved, females that were as young as 14 years old using substances like Xanax and marijuana. But one of the scariest things in the reports that I read in the investigation that was ensuing was that some of these girls were sleeping out of their house for 2 or 3 nights, and they weren't sleeping where they were telling their parents they were sleeping. So the favor that I'm asking from everybody in this room, and I did it with my kids, and they thought I was the biggest pain in the neck going, especially because I was a police officer when they were young, not a police chief and not a deputy chief, but a police officer. I made sure that I was sure where my kids were sleeping by not only bringing them and dropping them off, but talking to an adult to make sure that there was someone going to be home at all times over the course of the night to make sure that my daughter was getting the level of supervision that they would normally get at home, or my son. It just happened to be girls this time, this past school vacation, so I'm just asking all of you as a favor to me that you please take the steps, because some kids will be like, Mom, Dad, you're embarrassing me, you're making me feel bad.
That is your job.
I've never let you down before. But honestly, please, kids, as Marion had indicated, their brains are not developed fully till they're 25. That part of their brain that hasn't been developed is the one that leads them to take risky behavior, make poor decisions. Please check and confirm where your kids are at night. Honestly, it was 2-3 nights these girls slept out of the house, and they slept at a boy's house whose parents were away, and they were convinced their parents that they were sleeping at another house. So please double check and confirm. It seems like a very simple thing, but please share that with everybody too. I appreciate your attention, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And you know, the chief is exactly right. We had a number of incidents last week where we were picking up kids that were not in high school in the center of town at 3 o'clock in the morning. Frankly, you know what? I'm not clear how that happens. I am not clear how that happens. Yep, you wanted to go to bed, well, you should have made sure they were in bed. And, you know, as a parent, and I'm sure some of you know this, I used to be appalled when kids would come to, I did not let my kids sleep at anybody else's house. Anybody could sleep at our house, but I didn't let my kids sleep anywhere else. And I was appalled when kids would come over that we didn't know well. I didn't know their parents. They didn't know if I had a rack of guns in the kitchen. And nobody called. I would say, do you think you need to call your mom if we're going to do this? No. So it is both, you know, it's impacting your kids in terms of who you have coming in your house. It's impacting your kids in terms of where your kids are going for what people are doing. It's nothing for police chiefs to be, police officers to be picking up 6 or 8 kids sitting on a bench in the center of town at 3 in the morning, and they're in the 8th grade. So that's a pretty common occurrence. I do want to just point out to you, you know, these are some of the things. Parental controls really, if they are in 3rd grade, they can get past the parental controls. So please do not rely on the parental controls. You know, one of the things is you really should have those phones and devices at bedtime. And you know, at 10 o'clock or whatever they're going to bed, they're done. They should be done. And then, you know, I know people think that's a lost cause, but they should be, you should have your computer, you should have, you know, that smart TV or whatever in a place where everybody can see it. They should at least be afraid you're going to be looking over their shoulder. And make sure their profile settings are changed and go back and recheck, because they do default to public. And also, if a number of people who are on public contact you, eventually your setting will default out. So it can be other people doing it to them as well. You know, that conversation, the browser history, it's mind-numbing to read through their texts. But if they don't feel like you're looking, it's an empty threat. And then finally, you can skip through this, obviously not meeting with people and thinking about what they're doing. I want to just get to that website, which is really good. These are some really good websites, especially this Common Sense Media. Whoops, I think it's in the packet, right? It's in your packet here. But especially Common Sense Media, and if you want to kind of get yourself up to speed before you have that conversation about what they should, will you go back with what they shouldn't be doing? Whoops. There we go. All right. Anybody have any questions for me? Now that I've scared you all to death? Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, but the first is, how do you rectify the fact that our kids are growing up in the social media age? We don't want our kids on social media, but they have to learn.
Right. They have to be on social media.
We have to give them, like, how do you just say, let them do it and just keep tabs on it? Is that your recommendation?
I think, first of all, you should be setting limits on it, depending on your kid's age. You know, I am really, as a parent, pretty horrified when I see 12 and 13-year-olds on all of these kind of sites. So I think there needs to be a conversation, just like anything else, about you're allowed to be here and you're not allowed to be there, and why, and not just you can't do it, but why you're not there and these aren't safe. And that's going to be a continual conversation. I do think you've got to be, as boring as it is, you've got to be picking up that phone once in a while and going through and looking. So they, you know, a little fear is a good thing. And they should be concerned about what you're going to see on there. And really just engaging about what else they're seeing and hearing, you know? I mean, those are the conversations that are great for the car, when you don't have to look at each other. It all works well. And, you know, there is no way, and you could not send them off to college and hand them a phone on the way to college. So they have to be using it. Just the same way you don't send them out to walk to school and cross the street and say good luck.
Right.
You know, they learn rules for that. There are rules for social media, and they should be learning those at home, because unfortunately, if they don't, we see the end product of that, or they get themselves in trouble in school someplace, and then they have, you know, school consequences, sports consequences, whatever it is. Yeah.
I have a two-part question. So number one, is there, maybe on one of these resources, that is kind of a go-to place to find out what are the bad places that we shouldn't, you know, just the names of those places that
So
we
Common Sense Media is probably the best, but keep in mind what I said to you. Every week, we hear about something else. That, you know, it's like that game Whack-A-Mole. We think we figured out how this works, and we got that all settled, and then somebody has put something else up. So you really do have to kind of be yourself, looking online and keeping track, you know, just following what's out there. You know, we all live busy lives, and if you're not completely devoted to all these sites, sometimes it just kind of flies right by you. Assume it is not flying by them.
And then just the second part was, how hard is it, it seems to, I guess, the parent, or maybe I'm just the, you know, socially savvy, social media savvy, but to get to those, like the Snapchat.
Not hard at all.
Okay. Where do you learn? Where do you learn to get to those?
From each other. Are they born knowing how to do it? I mean, here's the other piece, is, as you said, right, they are growing up on it. None of us will ever be as nimble on social media as they are. You know, I know how to do a lot of things on social media, but there are lots of shortcuts. I know how to do it, 1, 2, 3. You know, 5th graders will tell me, well, you can go from here to there, because they've just grown up with their brain operating that way. So they are always going to be sort of quicker about that. When you see two heads together, they're teaching each other something they don't need to know. So it's a good rule of thumb.
So me as the parent,
Yeah.
where do I go to say, like, okay, maybe you have Snapchat because you're, you know, approaching high school, but, you know, and they say to you, okay, well, those disappear in 30 seconds. Where do I go to find, to retrieve those? Is that something that, like, the parent can do?
into it and
Yeah.
save whatever photos
Okay, so
they
you know.
post.
So we're,
Yeah.
My kids, if they want Snapchat, just be right at the front.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I need to be able to see
Right.
it. And I check it from time to time,
Right.
because there was a time I thought my 13-year-old blocked me. And it turned out it was a misunderstanding on my end. She was very lucky. But that's an
Yeah.
option. If she wants to post something that she doesn't want me to see, she can block me, and I'm none the wiser. So that was something I eventually learned and had to stay on top of. And
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
mind-numbing looking at those
It is.
pictures, right?
It is.
But you gotta look. Yeah.
even if
Yeah.
it's just friendly stuff with other girlfriends. like,
Well, it's
why are you
also,
blocking me if it's innocent? You know what I'm saying?
sometimes it's a good lesson, because it's things like the lady with the lanyard. There's no bad intent there, but they have to learn, if you put your shirt on, that you put pictures of your shirt that says Ryan Middle School, people can figure out where you live. That's not gonna be in their consciousness, there's nothing evil about that. They just are taking the, you know, we see hundreds of pictures where they're out on the porch with the number of your house on the front of your house. They are not thinking of that. So it, you know, that's a good teaching piece of, I'm not upset at you that you posted this picture, but you see how somebody can figure out what number we live at. Yeah.
Similar, I think, to that, I've been reading about software or programs you can buy as a parent to help monitor things.
I wouldn't waste my money.
No?
No. I'm not being
No, yeah.
flip,
No, no.
because there is no kid who can't get past those.
Okay.
And I think they give you a false sense of security. You know, I got that covered. Nah, you really don't. Yeah. So, yeah.
So I am adamant about showing my children these stories, right? Showing this has happened to this person committed suicide because of bullying, and I talk to them, and I talk to them, and talk to them, and talk to them so much that they tell me I talk to them every day, and they roll their eyes when I talk to them. So you said that you've done some classes and different things for the kids. Is there a place we can go for that? I think it would be beneficial for the children to be involved in something like this where they're hearing from other people about things that have happened. You know,
So we will probably make our way. I make my way around to the middle schools. I was in Chelmsford yesterday doing 5th to 8th grade. So we can certainly figure out a way to do that.
I agree. I think the real life stories of fear factor
Yeah.
with my kids, my girls are terrified of like some of these stories, and they need to hear it. This is a real world. This is a dark place. They need to hear these stories, and that will scare them enough to be careful because it is overwhelming. All this stuff is like, how am I going to monitor 3 daughters online trying to work full time, and okay, I'm going to police everybody. It's impossible.
Right.
You know, and I talk to my girls too, and I'm very open with them. And
What's interesting and what we do with the kids is, so we were all teenagers, right? Did you ever think you were going to be in the car that crashed?
No.
Did you ever think you were going to be the person who got
No.
your stomach pumped?
You're
So
invincible.
that's why, like, the smart choices that we do with them is such a good, because I don't tell them the story like I told you of this is what happened. I say, so then what do you think could have happened? And then they're like, well, what would you do? Because everybody, you know, it's the same thing as if I tell you, you know, this happens to some person our age. You immediately think, well, that's never going to happen to me because I don't drive down that street or I always lock my doors. It's human nature to separate yourself from the bad thing that happened. A good way to do it is to kind of just lead them through. Well, then what would you do then? And then they realize they would do it. Would you have gotten in that car? Yeah. Well, when you get in the car, this is what happens. And that is, it's not perfect because nobody ever, but it does drive home to them how much more at risk they are. Because they, you know, you sit and you stand and you tell them a story and they think, yeah, I'm never doing that. I'm smarter than that. You know, every kid thinks that they will know on the game system who the adult is. So we show them stuff and it's like, which one's from the kid and which one's from the adult? They have no idea. That's the piece
Yeah,
of it that's important. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Just regarding what the chief said as well, on Fortnite, my son plays it,
Yeah.
and, you know, talking with friends on text, not on the apps, but on text, when they talk about, oh, I just had 5 kills and shootings, all that stuff, when it's on the texting, is that also able to be tracked and everything?
Yeah, because usually they're talking in a group.
Okay.
They're group chats, group text. So it is, you know, 10 people. I say to kids all the time, how many people in this room had their parents tell them don't not go with a stranger when they were little? You know, of course, everybody's been well raised, they raise their hand. And I say, okay, so the people that you talk to online that you have never ever seen, what do we call them? And then they're kind of like, oh, they're a stranger. Like that takes them a good 2 seconds to figure out. I'm like, so if you don't know where they live and you have never seen them and you only hear from them when you're in the Fortnite room, what does that make them? And you can see like the wheels turn in their head and then they're like, oh, is that a stranger? It's like, yes, that is a stranger. So we don't go places with them. We don't set up a meet with somebody who's a stranger. Because they know it, they're not thinking about it. Yeah.
Do you have an easy way, and I'm sure the answer is no, but to, like, if I open up my son's phone, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I know where to start. I know he has Snapchat. I know the certain apps that he uses, and so I know I do check those. But he has like 100 apps on there. So how do you know?
He's probably using 60 of them.
Probably. So how do you know what to be constantly looking at?
Well, you know, some
you
of those
can't
things
monitor
that
every
right
single
here
app
are
every
the
single
concerning things. Like if you see the calculated percentage, that's a problem.
You can actually track the battery usage.
Well, but that is only that. So it tells you the apps they're using, but it doesn't tell you what they're looking at. So it helps
just-
a little bit. But
Yeah, it helps a little bit so you know what app they're most
Yeah.
frequently using, draining the battery. That's what gives you.
Yeah, if you find out it's
Right. The
calculated,
screen
that's a
time one,
problem. you know, or they're on Tinder or one of those.
Now for the calculator thing, if you click on the calculator, then the hidden site will come up, I'm guessing?
No.
Oh, it won't? So how do you know if there's something behind there?
You can't at home always get to that, but you know there's something going on there that you don't know about. That's when you really have to have that
But everybody
conversation.
has the calculator up.
Not the calculators, calculator percentage.
Oh, the percent is the
Yeah.
key. Oh,
So if you hit the calculator percentage, what would come up? Like,
No, calculator percentage is an app.
okay.
But most people see it and they think like, oh, that's fine. They're doing their math homework on there. They're not doing their math homework. Yeah.
Well, if you want to see part 2,
Yeah, I'm at the high school.